2021. If everybody could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Yetsey?
Here.
Mrs. McCarthy?
Here.
Mrs. Saxon?
Here.
Mrs. Tamiro?
Here.
Mr. Vaca?
Here. Finalization of the agenda. Is there anything to add and or delete?
The agenda is final as presented.
Outstanding. Thank you. We'll move right into the superintendent's treasurer's report.
Excellent. This evening, we have two shorter presentations for the Board of Education. Our first is a federally required presentation, and Mrs. Vance from the Office of Student Services would like to provide for the board some information on our federal funding. Mrs. Vance.
Thank you. So I'm just going to take a brief moment to share with you a little bit of information that is required, that we share annually information about federal funding that we receive from the state of Ohio. Currently, we receive from the state of Ohio that goes into four main funds. We have Title I, Title IIA, Title IV, and IDEA Part B. I'm going to break down for you the four funding groups that we have and a little bit of background of information of how some of those funds were spent previously last year. Title I is an Improving Basic Programs Fund. This money is based upon the number of students on free and reduced lunch. This money is to be used to improve basic programming. The money must be used at a school that has a free and reduced population with 5% of the building with the largest free and reduced percentage. And we cannot use the money to pay for things the general fund is used to pay for. So things purchased must be in addition to what we've always offered. Last year during the 2021 allocation was $349,783.63. Nearly all was used on salary and benefits for Title I teachers at Liberty. Title IIA is for supporting effective instruction. The amount of money we get is determined by the state and is based on a percentage that must give each local district. This money is used to support effective instruction through professional development by paying for consultants, workshops, sub-costs, or supplies that are needed for the training to take place. We cannot use the money to pay for things the general fund is used for to pay for things purchased that must be in addition to what we've always offered. So for the 2021 allocation, we received $91,700, and all funds were used to hire a teacher for class size reduction. For Title IV, student support and academic enrichment, this is a new federal fund with less regulation than others. It has come out in the last 2 or 3 years that this has been provided to schools. The amount of money we get is determined by the state and is based on a percentage that they must give each local district. This money is to be used to support students and to encourage academic enrichment opportunities with maximum of 15% set aside for technology. Same as the other funds, the money is to be used to pay for things the general fund is used to pay for things purchased that must be in addition to what we've always offered. And that 2021 allocation was $23,274. And those funds are used to expand STEM offerings in the district. The final was IDEA Part B, Special Education Funds. It provides funding to local school districts to support the special education programs and those students identified with a disability. The money amount is calculated by looking at our percentage of students, the quality that qualify with a disability, and what those disabilities are. Again, we cannot use the money to pay for things the general fund is used to pay for, so things purchased must be in addition to what we've always offered. And we've listed the allocation for the 2021 school year, which was $997,002. The available funds currently are used for salaries and benefits of our intervention specialists throughout the district. Please know that this information we also have noted on our website here in the district. And if you ever have questions about any of the federal funding grants that we use here in the district, you can contact myself, or you can also contact Mr. Pritt in the curriculum department. Both of us oversee all of these funding sources and make sure that they're properly supported throughout the district. And that is it.
Anybody have any questions for Mrs. Vance?
Mrs. Vance, can you email the board a copy of this presentation?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, our second report this evening is in regard to our most recent survey that was launched in the district at the beginning of February. And Mr. Hieronymus, if you could share our survey screen, I would appreciate it. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so again, as mentioned, back in the beginning of February, we launched a survey that immediately had a significant response throughout our families and throughout our community in regard to our current learning format and how we should begin to plan for the remainder of this school year, as well as looking ahead to the 21-22 school year. It has always been important to me and to this Board of Education to gauge the interest of our community and also determine how best to serve our students. This survey focused on what our learning format should be moving forward, what format would be desirable if we did move to a 5-day, full-day return, what transportation might look like, and then we offered an opportunity for some open-ended responses in regard to general thoughts and or concerns of our families. Back in January, Governor DeWine announced the opportunity for school staff to be included in the first rounds of vaccination. And in that, his request was that we were to return to in-person learning by March 1st. We have, since the beginning of this school year, through our hybrid format, met this requirement of in-person learning in order for our staff to be eligible to receive vaccines. Next slide, please. So as we think about the responses that we received, I'm going to turn it over to David Pritt to talk a little bit about the survey data itself. Again, I did mention that we did have an overwhelming response from our families, which was excellent for us to be able to make these decisions moving forward. However, it did take some time. Many families were very willing to offer suggestions and comments and concerns. And again, it was extremely important that we were able to read through and make sure that we were representative of our families as we move forward in the remainder of this school year. Mr. Pritt.
Thank you, Superintendent Ramsey-Casario. So as Ms. Casario said, we did receive an overwhelming response to our survey results. So when we filter through our results, we got about 2,400 results in total. When we look at the number of individual unique responses, we had 2,161 responses that we received. And the way that is done is by looking at the email addresses that are submitted with the surveys. So in some cases, we may have had the same email address fill out the survey a couple of times, or the system may have just duplicated responses. So it was important for us to get the actual picture of what we have here, which is 2,161 unique responses. 1,553 of those came from our hybrid families, which is about 72% of our responses. 503 from our remote families, which is about 23% of our responses. And another 105 reported having a mixed format family, meaning they might have a student in person and another student who is online. The nice thing about these responses and results are this pretty much mirrors where we are as a district with our proportions of hybrid versus online students. So our remote families make up currently about 25% of our total student population. And when you take that, the remote families with our mixed format families, that's about where that puts us. At the high end, it represents about 3,700 students. What we don't know is the exact number. And the reason for that is a mom and a dad in the same family could have submitted results together. So I may have a family that might have duplicated students. But at most, we're looking at 3,700 of our 4,500 students total. That actual number is probably lower than that. We're just not sure how much lower. So again, a great survey response from our community and our family. When we look at the next slide, what we're going to see is a community that's divided, to be honest with you. So the question was asked, knowing at the earliest possible return to a 5-day in-person learning is in April, the district should. And the options that were given there was maintain either the current learning model or return to a full 5-day in-person learning format. And you can see that literally those two categories are separated by a single vote. So we really have a community that's divided down the middle as to what our path for the remainder of the school year moving forward should be. So the next step then is to look at some of those comments, some of that data that was shared with us from families. And in the comment section of the 21,
we're going back 5 days.
We received about 1,400 comments, actually, providing input. And generally, they fell into some common themes and categories, which we'll talk about, but I wanted to give you some of those here. We've got the social distancing, the physical distancing of students being a concern for some families. The big one, the second bullet point there, is a big change for students at the end of the year, concern about social distancing, limited space in buildings, and then really the concern over students having to change classrooms or classroom teachers or schedules, for a relatively short period of time over the last 2 months. On the flip side of that, we have some very good and logical concerns from the other side, talking about, our students are seeing each other outside of school. They're able to see sports. They're able to play sports. Why can't we have them back in person 5 days? Or the other concern, which certainly we understand and we are working towards, is that I've got a student who's struggling with online. I need my students back in school 5 days. So that kind of gives you the big pictures of the things that were represented in those 1,400 and some odd comments, and things that we need to look at, knowing that we've got a divided community. How do we move forward and provide the best education that we can? So talking about that next step here is Mr. Ahern, our Assistant Superintendent.
Thanks, Mr. Pritt, for that analysis of the survey. I really appreciate it. So that last slide that Mr. Pritt shared gave you the examples of the kind of feedback that we received from families representing the two sides of that pie chart that you saw earlier. Those that wanted a full return to 5 days in-person learning, and those that wanted to keep the current format. In reading through all of that survey data and those comments that were submitted, there emerged three predominant themes that needed to be addressed as part of our decision-making. And those were, the first being student scheduling and consistency. When we looked at the number of students in the survey who requested a change in learning format, it became clear that in order to accommodate a 5 full-day in-person learning format, it would require significant changes to student schedules, necessitating in many cases changes to actual teachers and the teachers that were assigned to those students. This is true for even parents that responded they did not want a change of assignment for their learning format for their child. Changing a student's teacher at this point in the year creates a variety of issues that impact student learning. At this point in the year, teachers have well-developed routines and procedures that would be disrupted by a change in schedule. Everything from how to turn in assignments to understanding when teachers are available for extra help would have to be relearned. Students and teachers have both worked hard to build relationships and rapport and learn much about the mutual expectations that they have for each other. We understand that warm and caring, nurturing relationships are critical to learning for students. Finally, our teachers, through a combination of observation, assessment, and ongoing dialogue, have developed some deep knowledge about the individual strengths and weaknesses that their students have and their progress towards academic goals in their classrooms. Let us be clear here as we talk about these challenges that there is no professional educator in North Ridgeville City Schools who would not agree that setting those expectations and assessing student strengths and weaknesses and building relationships isn't done better in person and doesn't crave that opportunity desperately. But that brings us to the second of these two predominant themes that stood out: the overall timing of the decision. The survey outlined that at the earliest, a full 5-day return to in-person learning could only be accomplished in early April. Because our buildings are currently being used for partial in-person learning now, we would need to extend our March spring break by at least 2 weeks to allow our maintenance and custodial staff the opportunity to reconfigure the furniture and spacing of our buildings, and to allow for time for teachers to set up their classrooms, to be inviting, and to relearn, in some cases, new rosters of students. All of this effort, energy, and time would mean additional losses to valuable instruction time for students. Additionally, the first 3 weeks of April are when state-mandated high-state testing occurs, adding to the losses of instructional time and disruptions to what has already been a very disruptive year. Again, I need to say, not one educator in our community would say that a full 5-day return to in-person learning would not be better. They would all welcome the smiling faces in their classrooms, but the investment that would be made with 6 weeks remaining in the school year, the question is, when you do a cost-benefit analysis, is the timing right for such a decision? And that brings us to the final question about physical distancing that we saw throughout the comments of our surveys. The current reality is that both the CDC and the APA have guidance that recommends an ideal of 6 feet of distance, while saying that a minimum of 3 feet of distance is acceptable. Before the pandemic, our classrooms, our hallways, and our common areas were crowded, and some of our facilities were not ideal. Currently, 63% of our classrooms can maintain 3 feet of spacing, assuming a class size of 25. We know that in many cases, our class sizes are much larger than 25 students in a regular year. Our entire building and large portions of other, one entire building and large portions of other buildings do not have the space to maintain a minimum of 3 feet distance. They make it challenging. It would require capital investments of additional barriers to maintain a safe learning environment. We heard throughout the survey concerns from families about physical distancing and safety regarding almost every area of the day-to-day school operations in our buildings. So that concludes those 3 major areas that we felt needed to be addressed as we contemplated next steps in this process. Let me conclude before I turn it back to Ms. Ramsey-Casario by saying how impressed all of us were with the level of articulateness that so many of the respondents put into their comments, that they were thoughtful and they were well stated about the pros and cons of this very difficult decision, and that they were truly invaluable as we contemplate next steps. And with that, I'd like to turn it back to Ms. Ramsey-Casario. Thank you for your time.
So as mentioned by both Mr. Pritt and Mr. Ahern, we did have an overwhelming response to this survey. And while it has taken us some time to analyze these results, as Mr. Ahern stated, it was very eye-opening to see what the community had to share with us in regard to our 3 major factors, in addition to how we should take a look at the remainder of the school year. It is without hesitation that I would recommend that we would maintain our current learning format for the remainder of the school year based on what we now know. There is nobody, including myself, that believes that we cannot get back to a full 5-day in-person return come August, and it is our intention to do so. And we are planning that, and we'll continue to plan that throughout the summer. It would also be, as we consider these results, it was very difficult for me to make this decision, as our district leader. And I do believe that we do need to return our students to our classrooms as quickly as possible. Some of the information that the community may not be aware of, and perhaps we're not all aware of, is that we have throughout this time built relationships with students, and our teachers have continuously assessed our students and where they are, providing them opportunities throughout the school year to receive intervention or other opportunities for in-person learning when appropriate. Through our extended learning plan, which we will be submitting to the governor as requested by April 1st, we will include multiple opportunities where students will be able to receive in-person learning, perhaps more than what they are currently receiving as part of this plan, in addition to what our summer programming might look like. We have always offered summer school and will continue to offer summer school. It would be our intention, though, in this particular case, to look at more opportunities for in-person summer school rather than some of the online approaches that we've used in the past. We have already begun at some of our buildings to identify and target students that will be in need of some extended learning opportunities. And again, all of our building principals have been working with us prior to the governor's request of an extended learning plan to identify students who are in need. And this is in regard to both academics and mental and social emotional wellness. And so there are many opportunities that we will be reaching out to our families shortly to get a sense, again, from our community on how they feel we would be best suited to provide these experiences to students. Part of the governor's extended learning plan does require us to ask for that community feedback, and we would anticipate that within the next week, we will be able to reach out and gather that feedback. And then again, by April 1st, have that plan in place and really start to target, in some cases, students that will need some additional assistance. One example of some of what is already occurring as we look at our high school, I'm thinking about bringing in students for those high stakes tests in more of an in-person format. As you know, our students at the high school are coming in 1 day a week, but how can we offer more time as we think about those tests and how to prepare our students as we approach that time frame? So again, it is not ideal and certainly not the recommendation I thought I would be making, but based on the feedback, based on what we know, and our three main factors of student scheduling and consistency, overall timing, and that physical distancing piece that our parents spoke very loud and clear to, that we maintain our current format and really look at planning and preparing for August of 2021. Again, it is our intention and it is without reservation that we will open in a full all-in format in August of 2021, having the summer to properly prepare and space and do what we can to continue to maintain the safety of our staff and of our students. And with that, I would entertain any questions from the board.
Sorry.
Questions this evening?
Oh, I have a comment, Ms. Caserio. You mentioned high stakes testing, and we know recently that the federal government said that they will not be doing any blanket waivers for states to allow schools not to administer these tests. I've been in contact with several representatives in Ohio and senators just to talk about the problems that high stakes testing causes for our students and for our educators, and how the money that we spend on high stakes testing as well as the time spent, those are two valuable resources that we are in short supply of, as we all know, as we travel through this unprecedented year. So I've heard back from some of them. They do recognize that while there's no blanket waivers, there's some flexibility that's going to be allowed. So I know that I will continue to follow up with them with regards to how much testing we have to do, the timing of the testing, and those kind of things too. And when I hear back from our representatives, I'll certainly let you guys know. But I think it's a critical piece that needs to be addressed because it takes so much time. And we really need that time. The kids really need that time spent elsewhere, but we'll do our best.
We agree, and I can also just share with the board that as a group of Lorraine County superintendents, on a weekly basis, we are meeting with Gail Manning, Nathan Manning, in most cases, Dick Stein, Joe Miller. They're all present for those meetings and they hear us. They understand the predicament that we are in. specifically in regard to the amount of testing, but also in this year where the amount of in-person learning is so critical, and to spend it on testing is perhaps not the wisest use of time, specifically this year, but in general. Right. And so, you know, nobody's afraid of accountability, and we have lots of measures within the district that we currently use that tell us how our students are doing, that give us real-time data and the ability to intervene now rather than results that we receive over the summer when students are no longer in front of us. And so our Lorain County representatives, senators, and others are absolutely hearing what we have to say, and it's a matter of appealing to the masses, and hopefully changes will occur in the future. And Ms. McCarthy, I appreciate you advocating for us, as I know we all do, and I will also keep the board in the loop on anything we learn.
Thank you.
You know, testing has been one of my sore spots from for like 10, 12 years now. So.
Well, and I thank you for sending out the contact information. I too have made a couple of phone calls, but I received an email back from Senator Manning as well. So they are listening,
Yes, they are.
as you've said. Thank you, Superintendent Ramsey Casario. I appreciate the attention that you have given to the results from the community. I would also like to thank you for mentioning mental health, because that has been a huge issue for me, for our students in particular, our older students who know what it's like to have normal academic educational experiences, who are being deprived of that because of this pandemic. So I appreciate you paying attention to that, and I hope that we continue to make that a focus, especially if we can lift those rigorous academic requirements and really make mental health, you know, send our students off for this into the summer feeling confident and good. So thank you for that.
And so the community is aware. I mean, the teachers and the administration has done an amazing job of assessing this situation on a daily basis. This isn't something we wait for the governor to give us direction. They have done this day in and day out. They've assessed the needs of our students. They recognize the fact that even though everybody's done an amazing job through this pandemic, that there will be needs that need to be met, whether it be additional intervention, and they're already addressing those. Again, they're not waiting until the start of next school year. We've already started addressing those, are already starting to have these conversations, because the education of our students is second only to their safety. And I know everybody wants to get back in these buildings, as does everybody sitting here. And based on the results of the survey, it couldn't have come down any closer to 50-50 if we had tried to do it that way. So there's still not division, but people are on both sides of the fence of this situation and this pandemic. And in such a short time period to turn the world of these students upside down yet again, we had to look at the benefit of that, and was there truly a benefit, or was there an opportunity to do more harm? And in some cases, based on mental health, these students have gotten used to a routine and gotten used to teachers, and these teachers have been looking out for the mental well-being of all our students. And to change teachers and introduce new teachers to that mix, I don't think it would have benefited any of our students. So please bear with us. This pandemic will hopefully be a once in a lifetime for our kids, and we will never have to address this issue again. But no, we are committed to returning to full 5-day instruction at the start of the school year in August. Thank you to administration for really staying on top of it. I can't speak more highly of our administration as well as our teachers and our staff.
Mr. Vaca, hello, it's Mrs. Saxon. I just wanted to add to my appreciation to the superintendent and to your staff and to all the teachers and the community, because as Mr. Vaca said, this wasn't an easy decision. But one thing I can say as a parent also of 2 children in the district is that there has been consistency this entire school year. So while we would all like to be back in person with I know my kids would love to be, they haven't even had an opportunity to meet their teachers in person because they are online. So I appreciate the consistency, even though this isn't what we had hoped for. And I appreciate that the teachers are really going out of their way to help students individually. And I urge community members, if your student is dealing with any mental health issues or any issues at all, please reach out to the teachers. Please reach out to your principal. They can only help you if they know what's going on. So many times they may not be aware of something, and you are not a burden. Just we're in the home stretch of this. So thank you to everyone for all your hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Saxon. Thank you. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
All right, we're going to move into hearing of the public. Here's an opportunity for the public to address the Board of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Baca. Before I turn on the ability for participants to unmute their microphones, we would like to make sure that everyone states their name and their address before announcing, before making their statement. And so with that, I'm going to now give the ability for participants to unmute their microphones. Okay, it looks like we have.
Am I able?
Yes, you were able to speak. We got you. Please state your name and your address.
Sure. My name is Laura Baker, and I live at 7369 Songbird Lane.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm incredibly disappointed to hear that we're not going back. I really wanted our kids back to school for more in-person days. I was kind of hoping that those that wanted to come had the option, and those that wanted to stay remote were allowed to stay remote. But I understand. I came on a little bit late. I was at a basketball game. But I wanted to know two questions. Was there any consideration for plexiglass to be used on students' individual desks like other schools are using to get students back? And if so, why was this not an option for us? And if it was not considered, why was this not a consideration? And then secondly, I wanted to know if there was any additional consideration to the high school and the high school itself, just getting one more additional day.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baker. You did cut out a little bit, but I certainly know where to find you, and we will follow up with some information regarding your questions.
Was any of my questions heard?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So someone's just going to follow up with me? It's not going to be addressed right now?
Yes, we will follow up with you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McMillan?
Hi, I just wanted to say from the Teachers Association to let the public know we all do really, really care about all your kids, but this decision was not easy, but it is the right decision. I know there are a lot of people who are disappointed, but at this point in the game, if we were in December, we'd be doing everything we could to be going back. But at this point, our best hope is to have a normal return in August, and anything going prior to August would possibly set us back in August. So we're getting through this school year from a teacher's standpoint, and just I like to use analogies. When you're playing poker, you don't reshuffle the deck in the middle of a hand. We just kind of have to play the hand out that we've been dealt, and hopefully, get a better grip on next year. So I applaud the decision. It wasn't easy. In a 50-50 game like this, where half the people are going to be mad or half the people are going to not get their way, it's a winless situation for the district, but we're really putting the kids first. So I applaud you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan.
Do we have anyone else that would like to unmute their microphone? I think we have Amy unmuting. Go ahead, Amy.
Yes, this is Amy Sheely, 8346 Depot Street. And I just want to also thank you for, I have no doubt that you have had our kids' best interest in mind this entire time. And you're between a rock and a hard place, and I get it. And I think there's a lot to be said. I second what somebody else said. There's a lot to be said for consistency. I have friends whose kids are in 5-day-a-week school, and they've been bouncing back and forth with class quarantines, some of them 4 and 5 times during the course of the year. And that's no good for anybody. And with fewer than 3 feet and these, more contagious variants that the doctors I work with are suspicious are going to be prevalent, we could make all these plans to go back and the numbers could tank in April. So I want to thank you very much for the consistency and for the care that you've given for our kids this year.
Thank you, Ms. Sheely.
And I believe that will conclude the people who are interested in sharing. So I'll turn it back over to you. I will then turn off the ability for people to unmute their microphones. Mr. Baca.
Thank you. Okay, if we won't continue to move on, we have no education or policy committee reports this evening, so we'll move right into communications report. Ms. Yetsey.
It is recommended that the Board of Education accept the following gifts with appreciation. A monetary donation of $6,795 was donated by North Ridgeville Athletic Boosters for the purpose of purchasing track suit warm-ups to the North Ridgeville Schools track team. $76.94 was donated by Ashley Meese through the Charities Aid Foundation of America to the North Ridgeville High School. Thank you to the community for their tremendous support of our schools and students.
Thank you, Ms. Yetsey. All right, we'll move on to buildings and operations report. First, we have reassignment of equipment, which includes 1 speed odometer, 1 smartboard, 7 Chromebooks, 1 MacBook Pro that will be used for spare parts sold or disposed of. Secondly, we are being asked to consider granting an easement to the city of North Ridgeville to expand a multi-purpose use trail to connect Bainbridge Road with Center Ridge Road. This easement will allow the completion of the trail just west of St. Peter's and north of the library. This easement is a no-cost agreement that will benefit the entire community. This is the first reading for these items. The second reading and consideration for approval will be March 16th at the regular meeting. Okay, we'll move on to human resources report. Ms. Saxon. I'll unmute her.
Okay, I'm sorry. We have a number of items in the human resources report. 56 special project supplementals, 4 certified staff leaves of absence, 2 support staff leaves of absence. This is the first reading for these items. The second reading and consideration for approval will be at the March 16th regular meeting. This concludes the human resources report.
Thank you, Ms. Saxon. All right, move into the finance audit report. Ms. McCarthy.
Yes, thank you. We have an opportunity to save the district over $10,000, which I'm really excited about. So we would like to award CDW/G with the purchase of 1,350 Google Chrome Management Console licenses for next year's Chromebook purchases to avoid that price increase that's going to take place on March 9th. That's next week. So like I said, this purchase will save the district over $10,000 if we do this now. The IT department sent out a request for quotes and received 3 quotes. And the IT department is recommending that we approve the quote of $32,400 to CDW-G. So I recommend that the Board of Education approve this purchase of Google. That's the combination of Google and Chrome. It's now called Google.
Thank you.
Or we can call it Google Chrome if you want to be, traditional. That's fine. Okay. I recommend that we approve the purchase of Google Chrome Management Console licenses with CDW-G in one reading.
Second.
Moved by Ms. McCarthy, second by Ms. Yetsey. Is there any discussion? Michael, if we can make sure the contract is Google Chrome, I would appreciate it.
I would also like to thank everyone who was involved in discovering the savings that this would bring to our district. So thank you for noticing that and bringing that up. Mr. Hieronymus, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Yetsey?
Yes.
Mrs. Saxon?
Yes.
Mrs. Tamira?
Yes.
Mr. Vaca?
Yes. Okay, we'll move into human resources report. Ms. Saxon?
Yes. We have one item to consider under the Human Resources Report, 2 support staff substitute appointments, 1 non-NREA supplemental contract, 1 unpaid volunteer recognition, 1 certified staff adjustment, 2 certified staff resignations, 1 supplemental contract resignation. That's more than 1, that's several. I move to approve the human resources items in 1 reading.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Saxon, second by Ms. Tamira. Is there any discussion?
I would like to wish our retired teachers the best of luck. And on a personal note, my children have had both of these teachers and they are amazing. And I'm very sad to see them leave. But I wish them lots of luck and thank them for their service to our schools.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Saxon?
Yes.
Mrs. Tamira?
Yes.
Mrs. Yetsey?
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Vaca?
Yes. Okay. It is recommended that the Board of Education adjourn this regular meeting.
Moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Tamira, second by Ms. McCarthy. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Tamira?
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Yetsey?
Yes.
Mrs. Saxon?
Yes.
Mr. Vaca?
Yes. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your evening.